is our book report presentation on our book Dopesick by Beth Macy, which highlights the dealers, doctors, and drug company that addicted America, by Kenzie, Chase, Kyle, Danae, and Annabelle. For our outline, we have our book overview, stories in Dopesick, and our concepts. And as for the pictures shown, you can see some signs of addiction, including behavioral signs as well as physical. Now for our book overview and summary. In Dopesick, doctors and practitioners were overprescribing OxyContin, and Purdue Pharma was using marketing tactics to persuade doctors into prescribing these drugs. For example, they would take them on a nice dinner, give them money, or pay for all expense trips. Sales reps convinced doctors that OxyContin was much less addictive than other opioids, despite the lack of evidence. OxyContin quickly became widely used in poor rural areas of the country. Purdue Pharma specifically marketed to rural working-class areas where jobs involved physical labor and chronic pain was common among the workers. We will see this in some of the stories we go over shortly. The first story in Dopesick that we're going to focus on is about a man named Eddie Bish. Eddie's teenage son died of an opioid overdose. Eddie worked to raise public awareness about the dangers of OxyContin. He created a website called OxyKills.com. OxyKills.com served as a powerful tool, attracting people's attention, raising awareness on the dangers of OxyContin, and serving as a space for people to share their own stories. Another story we're going to go over is about a man named Ronnie Jones. He was interviewed by Beth Macy, the author of Dopesick, which he provided much insight into the drug trafficking trade. He was one of the head heroin traffickers that distributed drugs down Interstate 81, running through urban cities to small towns like Appalachia. He targeted small, rural, underclass communities where people were already struggling with opioid addictions. He was eventually apprehended by the police and imprisoned for trafficking heroin. The first concept we're going to go over is relapse prevention method. Relapse prevention methods are a self-managed technique used to teach a person how to identify and deal properly with situations that tend to lead to relapses. MATs, also known as medicated assisted treatments, as seen in Dopesick, are sometimes the cause of relapses if people do choose to abuse them. Portugal's approach implements relapse prevention methods through their approach of caring for the individuals rather than just simply incarcerating them. Next is interpersonal and family therapy, which includes discussing and working through one's own trauma with trusted individuals to help alleviate one's own anxiety or depression. Treatment is very common in those with drug or alcohol addiction. It connects to Dopesick through topics like Portugal's addiction treatment and the creation of the OxyKills.com website. In the picture shown are some techniques that are used in interpersonal therapy. The next concept we're going to focus on is interdisciplinary perspectives on preventing illness. The first one is primary prevention, which consists of actions to avoid disease or injury. For example, parents speaking up and sharing their stories of their children or people close to them overdosing on opioids. Secondly is secondary prevention, which includes actions taken to identify and treat illness or injury early on with the aim of stopping and reversing the problem. For example, weeding out the big pharma companies bribing doctors to sell more opioids. Lastly is tertiary prevention, which is actions to contain damage and prevent disability and reoccurrence as well as rehabilitate. An example of this is building detox programs to battle lone prison sentencing. Next is the biopsychosocial model of pain, which is a way of understanding health through biological, psychological, and social factors that impact individuals' lives. Biological factors are shown in Dopesick, as addiction was causing physical pain and withdrawal. The psychological factors were shown as addiction was being fed from craving as well as emotional strain and stress, and social factors were shown through poverty and lack of support and services for the individuals. To dive deeper into it, pain accounts for a large percent of all visits to the doctor's office, and when pain turns into severe or chronic pain, it can come to dominate the lives of individuals. It can severely limit their daily functioning and overall living experience, as well as lead to serious social and economic consequences. Early accounts in the book Dopesick showed us that physical pain symptoms were the predominant reason opioids were introduced into the lives of individuals living in rural Appalachia. All too often, as we saw in Dopesick, pain is treated as being solely a physical issue. Being as though pain is generally treated as a physical issue, the full scope of what it actually is or could be is not often considered. By analyzing pain through the lens of the biopsychosocial model, we can clearly see that pain is more than something a person experiences physically through things such as injury or body wear and tear. Rather, it is something that can also manifest through biological factors as well as through psychological and social factors such as stress, illness, genetic factors, depression, emotional trauma, job loss, lack of health care, and lack of social and or community support. Unfortunately, a deeper dive into the individual's pain is often overlooked. Rather than looking into the biological, psychological, and or social factors that may in fact be contributing to the individual's overall pain, the quick fix of medication is often the go-to method of treatment. And unfortunately, as it relates to many individuals in Dopesick, pain reactions and responses were often much more than something people experienced physically. These individuals were facing contributing factors stemming from biological, psychological, and social issues and consequences. Yet, despite that, they were simply provided the quick fix rather than had their pain assessed in a holistic and all-inclusive manner that took into account the biopsychosocial model. Lastly, we have social power. Social power is the concept of an individual to influence beliefs and decisions. The 6 different types of power are reward, coercive, expert, informational, referent, and legitimate. To start, the reward power influences through offering rewards such as prizes and incentives. Coercive power, which influences going through fear of punishment or any negative punishment. Now are more apparent powers such as expert power, which influences based on expertise or knowledge. In Dopesick, the influence of doctors are trusted since they seem the most knowledgeable. But when doctors prescribed opioids, which we now know was a poor choice in judgment, there was no way to predict this in the beginning. The influence of the experts on the human body was one of the main reasons many followed blindly to taking the drug. As well, in the meantime, many believed the pharmacy was the expert pitching to the doctors the pain medicine, since it was approved by the FDA at the time, creating a trusting expert power illusion. Next, we have referent power, which is an influence based on the respect, admiration, and if a person identifies with the influencer. In Dopesick, we have read about people who are against the MAT program, but as well those for it. Important influencers are those that have recovered using MAT, making them a great, powerful role model for it. They break down stigma and any misconception of it. Next, we have informational power, which influences through obtaining accurate information. In Dopesick, public health advocates can shape beliefs about MAT by sharing evidence-based information, since many lack to understand MAT, which ultimately reduce the amount of overdose deaths. Lack of information can be seen throughout the entire book and why many mishaps and unfortunate events occurred specifically in Dopesick. Lastly, we have legitimate power. This power is based on a role or formal authority a person has, such as, for example, a doctor or a judge. Legitimate power was shown in Dopesick during the case that dealt with medicated-assisted treatments, also known as MATs. Through the judge's ruling, they denied the usage of MATs based on the negative stigma associated with them. People saw them as simply replacing other forms of drugs. They thought the best form of recovery is the complete absence of drugs.